Hi, I just read The Mortal Engines, not because I wanted to, but because the movie is coming out soon, and I'm not above shameless self-promotion.
This is the introduction song. It's not very good, but it's not too long.
My opinions on this book are a little weird, but they can be summed up pretty easily. So, for the first half, this book was just a read. Like, it wasn't good, it wasn't bad, it wasn't okay. I just sat down, I read it, I got through it, and that was it. I felt nothing. The second half of this book, however, is a lot better. Like, it's not good. I won't say it's good, but it is between okay and good. I'll call it okay plus. Because by that point, the main characters had gone through some development, so they were a lot better. The plot had progressed to a point where things actually came to a head, and it didn't feel like just events that were moving towards something greater, like we actually reached the something greater, and there was actually a pretty good climax. Like, I'll say the climax is legitimately good here. So this book takes place in kind of a weird world. So basically, it's a couple thousand years in the future, and the whole world has been, like, shattered and restructured through cataclysm. Like, the landscape has completely changed, oceans have moved around, some places are flooded, some places are bare where they shouldn't be. And so at some point in the past, in order to avoid this, humans, took their cities and towns and they put them on tracks, and they started moving around. So, nowadays the majority of the human population moves in these, mobile cities, and they're the size of cities, too. If you see the trailers for the film, they show them. They're huge. And the main characters live in London, which is one of the biggest cities, and it at the beginning, it eats a smaller town, because that's what most cities in this do. They catch up to smaller ones, they, just grab them, they strip them for parts, take all their food, their fuel, and then the people there are either just killed off or turned into slaves, and it's rather unpleasant for everyone all around, but we'll get to that in a minute. And the main character is this guy named Tom, who is an apprentice historian in London. And as the story starts off, they capture another town, and he goes down to the part of London, I forget what it's called, the Gut, where they take the town apart right after it's captured. And he goes down there with the head historian, a guy named Valentine, who Tom really looks up to, and he's got a super big crush on Valentine's daughter, Katherine. And so he goes down there, and then a girl who was in the town with this nasty-ass scar on her face finds Valentine and tries to kill him. And Tom saves Valentine's life, but then Valentine pushes Tom and the girl off the ledge and out of the city. So he thinks they die. They don't actually die. And then the story unfolds from there. So the first thing that I just have to address when talking about this book is that the setting is just stupid. Okay, I'll give it credit for this. Moving cities, mobile towns, eating and digesting each other, that's a unique idea. I certainly wouldn't have thought of it, but it's just goofy. It's setting aside all the practicalities of it. There's no way you'd have enough fuel to do that. There's the city would sink into the ground. It would be too heavy. There's no way it could actually move at 80 miles an hour like it does in the book. Setting all of that aside, it's just goofy. It's a silly image, seeing something that big, rumbling around, coming towards you. And maybe this is being colored by me seeing the trailers for the movie and before I read it, but it just looks stupid, I'm sorry. However, as a metaphor, the setting actually works pretty well. Because the whole thing is just a metaphor for imperialism. Because imperialism is when, one bigger, more powerful country goes to another one and, either takes it over completely or just starts taking its resources, or both, maybe. And so this works great as a metaphor for that. Because think about it, it's cities, which are basically independent countries, going around and only attacking people that are smaller and weaker than them, and just taking everything from them, and they literally refer to it as eating and digesting the smaller towns, because there's nothing left of them afterwards. And also, they need to do that to survive. It's the system that they have in place. It's not a good system, it doesn't make sense, and they make it clear later on in the book that it's not sustainable forever, but they just don't know any other way to do it, and so people just don't want to change their minds. And so it works well there. Hell, it's the main city in this book is literally London, okay? London was the fucking capital of the British Empire, the largest imperialist power in world history, okay? It's not exactly subtle, okay? And it's not teaching me personally anything new, because, like, yeah, I already know about imperialism and how it works, but it could teach other people new things, and it does work well as a metaphor. So I'll give it that much. The actual plot and characters are okay, I guess. They range from, like, okay to okay plus, for the most part. Because, like I said, the beginning of this book is just a read. Like, when Tom and the girl, her name is Hester, like, fall out of London, and then they start following it, and then they get, like, caught up by slavers and pirates, and they basically are just making their way to London again, is what they're trying to do. And that's, like, again, it's not bad, it's just a read. I didn't really feel anything while reading it. And finding out a little bit more about Hester and her history with Valentine is actually okay, because she's an alright character. Tom is just really annoying and stupid, and he's kind of in denial about Valentine. Like, he's thinking, no, he didn't push me, he must have done something else. But then later on he learns, like, okay, you know what, maybe he's not the person I thought he was. And once that happens, he becomes a better character. Whereas Hester is, I mean, there's nothing about her that's particularly interesting or particularly likable, but you do get a feel for all the nasty shit she's been through, and you feel like she is a survivor, so I kind of had respect for her. And one small thing that I enjoyed, actually, was how her face had this giant deforming scar on it. Like, she's missing an eye, she's missing part of her nose, and they make it clear, like, yeah, she's not beautiful around the scar. She's pretty ugly, but I kind of like that, because in these sorts of books, like, every main character has to be super pretty all the time, and I like that they just did something a little bit different from that. It's like saying, yeah, she's ugly, but that doesn't demean her value as a person, so that was kind of nice. And while Hester and Tom are journeying, Valentine's daughter, Katherine, or Kate, is on London, and she's realizing that something weird is going on, and she has to try and investigate. And at first I didn't like this, because a lot of it is just her figuring out the same stuff that Tom already found out, and that the audience already read about, and she's just finding out about it again. So there's no surprise or shock or mystery for the readers. Like, for example, she starts to find out that, like, oh, okay, Valentine tried to kill Hester Shaw for this reason, and, well, the audience already knew that, so it doesn't really do much, but at the same time, it's necessary for her character development, so, okay, it works out okay. And then, like I said, once you get to the second half, things are a lot better, because at this point, they stop playing around with the idea of acting like there's a mystery. They just are saying, like, okay, here's what the bad guys are doing, let's try and stop them. And so from there, it's like a whole bunch of action and a whole bunch of suspense and thriller stuff. And, you know, like I said, it's not good exactly, except for the very climactic part, but it is a lot better than what we had before. Like, I did feel something. And part of that is because, you know, the characters got some development, so I actually cared a little bit more about them. You know, Tom was less stupid, less annoying, and Katherine also less stupid and annoying. But, again, it's not particularly amazing. There's not a whole bunch of twists or anything. It's just, yeah, it's better. The villains in this, I kind of want to say they're subpar, but I also kind of want to say that they're kind of good. It's very weird, because there's like three main villains in this book, okay? There's one named Shrike, and he is this, like, machine with a human brain in it called a stalker, and Valentine sends him after Hester and Tom to go kill them. And at first you don't know why exactly Stalker has this weird obsession with Hester, but, like, even just beyond being a machine and being programmed to kill her, he has this weird, almost human connection to her. And at first you want to find out what that is, and when you find out what it is, you're like, oh wow, that's actually that's actually kind of interesting. It's not something I've never seen before, but it's kind of cool. It gives him a little bit more personality, a little bit more depth, but then he's also he doesn't work that well as an intimidating threat to the characters. Like, every time he shows up, they either run away without much trouble or they disable him without much trouble, and so I don't know. He's just not that good of a villain. And then you also have Valentine, who at first he seems like an evil asshole, and then you start to see, like, okay, so he has some reasons for being an evil asshole, but, he's still an evil asshole, so maybe, like, it's hard to feel sympathy for him. But then they also try and do, like, a bit of a redemption arc with him, and, like, there's just no build-up to it, so it doesn't work well. And the last villain, the one that gets the least amount of screen time, is Crome, and he's actually the mayor of London. And I'll give it credit. Like, it's kind of interesting to see how London used to be a semi-democratic system, and this guy has become a dictator over the years, but, like, just by consolidating and amassing power. And so it's kind of interesting to get bits and pieces about how he did that. But also, he's just kind of a crazy asshole villain. Like, there's not a whole lot to him. At least the book admits that he's kind of crazy and stupid, though. Like, again, I mentioned earlier that their current system of going around and being mobile cities and eating other cities, like, that just can't be done forever. But he just doesn't know any other way. And so, again, as a metaphor for imperialism, that works well, because, like, the ruling class of the more powerful nations, they need to keep doing this in order to constantly grow their economies and maintain their lavish lifestyles. So, again, it works as a metaphor, but as a character, he's just not that interesting or threatening. And as for the actual writing of this book, it's, for the most part, it's just not notable. Like, it's not particularly good or bad. Actually, it's a little bad. Like, it doesn't give quite enough detail to give me a picture of what's going on. Like, some of the cities and towns that they come across, like, they have these unique designs and everything, but they don't tell us enough about them for me to get, like, a clear picture in my head. So it's kind of bad. But then we also have parts where it switches to one of the characters that isn't a main character. So, like, for the most part, it just follows Tom in third-person limited and Kate in third-person limited. But occasionally it'll switch to, like, Valentine or Shrike or something like that, and all of a sudden it's still in third-person limited, but it's in present tense instead of past tense. And I don't know, I feel like it was trying to be a little poetic or something, but I don't know, it just felt weird, and I don't like it when it shifts tenses like that in a book like this. It's just off-putting. The dialogue has some issues once in a while, like, nothing too terrible, but during, like, the exposition scenes, it just feels more like they're talking to the audience than to other characters, and like if that happened just once, it wouldn't have bothered me too much, but it happens multiple times in the first half of the book, and, well, again, it's something that's better in the second half, so it's not the worst. That's about all I have to say about this, though. I mean, I want to give it a pass, because even if there are parts of this book that aren't good, or that are just bad, it's clearly trying. Like, I never felt like it was just being lazy or if it was just checking off boxes. I mean, like I said, the setting is unique. It's stupid, but except as a metaphor where it's smart, but it's also unique. Like, see, I just have mixed feelings about a lot of this. The main characters are not great, but they get development, and we see some of their friendships form near the end, and so that's fun to see. And same with the villains. Like, they range from being, like, just unthreatening, crazy assholes to actually being kind of deep and kind of complex and kind of interesting. So, overall, I just don't know what to say about this book. I mean, I liked the ending and the climax, the climax and the ending. I should probably put those backwards, whatever. I'm not doing another take of this. But the ending actually, it ends in a way where it's not setting up where you have to read the sequel in order to continue the story. Like, this works pretty well as a standalone book. So I guess if the idea of, like, cities eating and digesting each other sounds interesting to you, then check it out. If the idea of a book that works well on its own, but could also be part of a series, interests you, check it out. Beyond that, I don't know if I can really recommend this, but I also don't think I can tell you to stay away from it. Like, it's a perfectly passable book that was not great, but it was clearly trying. I went to all the trouble of making this review of a book that is trending, so if you could like and comment and subscribe and all that good shit that I'm supposed to say at the end of this video, I would really appreciate it.